for it to kick in that I'm like, oh, we're live. Okay, so hello everybody. It is Wednesday. It's Wednesday because we're on Facebook and we are on YouTube. We have a special guest today, Chris Sawyer. But before we get into talking about who and what and the amazingness that Chris is, we want to say Happy Veterans Day. It is Veterans Day, so cheers to all the veterans out there. And a little fun kick for everybody. Ben was in the Army, and Ben, you got a line down in the middle of your face, but there's Ben in the Army. Dan in the back office, you guys hear we talk about here. He was in the Navy. So thanks for you guys. And then just because I'm going to kick it in, my brother over here was in the Air Force and actually works for the Navy today. So whoopsie daisy, sorry about that. So thank you, veterans out there. Happy Veterans Day. Cheers to you. Chris, you've got a tie-in on veterans as well, right?
Yeah, being a wine judge, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but one of our great friends, Chip Cassidy, who judged with me in a number of the competitions here on the East Coast or on the West Coast, but also the East Coast. He taught at basically Florida International University. He was a Purple Heart. And so the stories and everything that I got to learn from him. And I mean, he was basically medic. I mean, he was putting people back together. He was like a person right out of MASH, the show. And he really was one of the few Purple Hearts of Florida. And he was a great wine critic, but also just a big-hearted soul that really led to the making of that whole program at Florida International University that really made their hospitality program go through the roof because of his love for wine. So really someone special that had not only made a big difference in the United States as a member of the Army, but also as an amazing person that really contributed a lot to the wine industry as well.
Cool. Well, cheers to all the veterans out there. I'm going to take a sip for them.
Out to them for sure.
Absolutely. We got Yolanda and Ron and Lisa on, so that means we can start. That's what that means. But Chris, who are you? How do you know these amazing people, the Papa Pietros and the Perrys?
Well, let me tell you this. I've been the lucky kid that grew up in Russian River Valley. So as a child, I didn't know what the heck I was doing there, but I used to play in the vineyards, and pretty much all the Pinot and Chardonnay, if it was even growing there, was sold to Corbel, and that's kind of how it went until it became really something of note, back in the 80s when it started to catch fire. So as I was progressing there, I went to Petaluma High School here in Sonoma County, and then I went to University of California, Davis, where I was the music critic there for the campus, and got to do all sorts of things, had my own radio show and everything. But then I needed more credits. And so they said, Chris, you're going to be Mr. Science Guy. You're going to write about things of science. And so it turned out that this viticulture enology thing was kind of a big deal at UC Davis. And I realized, at that point, I really wanted to be the Bay Area music critic so bad. But then I started going, you know what? I need to take a class or two in wine. And, pretty much a minor later. And, I just made the decision to move back to Sonoma County and start writing about wine. And I did back in the 90s, and started writing for the San Francisco Chronicle and so many other magazines, Somm Journal, Tasting Panel, so many, Napa Valley Life right now. I'm doing a lot of stuff for them. But working with the Sonoma County vintners and all the great organizations, the Russian River wine growers. And in the midst of all this, I become a sommelier. Go figure. So
I was going to ask you
for about 29 years now, and I worked for the Getty family as their private sommelier for 8 years, and I still work for John Lasseter from the Pixar fame for 20 plus years. I've worked for him. I am also a partner at Gravenstein Grill in Sebastopol, and I've won the top Sommelier of Sonoma County Award for 8 straight years. If someone else wins it, that's awesome. But I'm doing my best, and the great thing is I've known Ben for a long time. I've known the family for a long time. I love their wines. We had a very, very dear, close friend, some years ago, some people that just these kinds of people that come together, and Greg Walter was one of those people, and that's one of the reasons I'm drinking out of the Pinot on the River glass right here, because these are kind of the things that we can't be doing it, so we might as well be drinking out of our glasses. But Greg Walter, I think, is one of the things that really brought Ben and I and the family together, and made me respect Pinot even more. I mean, hey, believe me, I am the biggest Pinot fan. I got the Pinot Forum shirt on here. You know,
Yes.
not many people. There are only 2, maybe 3, and I'm one of them, that have been invited back twice to Pinot Forum, because usually it's just a one-shot wonder.
But
I've been
invited
twice.
What is the Pinot Forum?
Pinot Forum is put on by the Russian River Wine Growers Association, and it's in association with bringing in the best sommeliers in the nation. And, you know, Evan Goldstein's there, and all these people are leading these kinds of things. And we're doing dinners, and we're doing all these kinds of learning experiences. And, you know, just everything we can do. I mean, having grown up in Russian River Valley is a big deal for me. And watching its success, you know, and we're going to talk about success in 3 forums tonight. But, you know, the fact is that where it's gone is been really something for me, and where my real, you know, people write a lot about me, and then I write a lot about people. So it's kind of crazy. You know, like, that's not normal, I don't think. You know, a lot of the things, my new show, which is called The Varietal Show, has become really successful on YouTube as well. And I love being on shows with people and really talking about the greatness of what they do. And obviously, Papa Pietro, when the winery invited me to be a part of it, of course, yes, of course I will be on the show with you guys. I love your wines, of course. So that's pretty much that's a small thing. And then SawyerSomm.com, you guys can all find out more information about me on SawyerSomm.com. But that's a kind of a nutshell about who I am. They also do call me the sommelier to the stars, and that's all of you guys that are watching right now. You're the stars.
Nice. So you're an acclaimed sommelier, obviously. You're a wine educator, you're a wine judge, you're a public speaker, you're a fan of the wines, you were a paper boy, you worked at the Chronicle. I gotta just throw all these little things in there.
Yep.
And do that paper grouping with you guys.
Yeah, basically both Ben and I delivered newspapers. That's what made us great people. Obviously, it brought us together too.
I read the newspaper. Does that help? I don't know if that helps or not.
The Pinot Forum, originally for 8 or 9 years, it just was, after that long of time, it was time to move along and let somebody else come in. But you would have to write a paper every year, and I felt like I was back in college writing a term paper to present to the 30 sommeliers in the program, which was always interesting, but it got to be a little too much. So after 8 or 9 years, it was time to move on. But a fabulous organization, and they spread the word of Russian River, which is really, really important.
They certainly do. They certainly do. And you know, Russian River, because of that organization, has really become associated with great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. There's no doubt about the fact that this organization has done amazing things to help really build that block for everyone out there across the nation and around the world. As we drink the Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. Exactly. Yeah. And I got to show the Pinot on the River label again, which was a Greg Walter invention, and how he did that. And oh gosh, where did we start that one? I know that we used to do it all at the old Russian River Vineyards place, but we had some that really got haywire. There was the one that we did at Rodney Strong, where it was raining cats and dogs, and women were just taking off their shoes and saying, "Screw it, I like Pinot. I don't care if I have to walk in my barefoot." That was Pinot in the river. In the river. Pinot. That was right. We called that one Pinot in the river, which was true. And then it kind of ended up being in Healdsburg Plaza. So it's a really, really great thing. I'm sorry it's not happening this year, but if you guys saw from my email blasts and things like that this week, I took a great picture of me and the Papa Pietro family that is like one of my favorite pictures ever of in wine country. It's the 5 of us just standing there having a great time at Pinot on the River.
Julia just piped in and said you are her Somm idol, Ben for Julia. So
thank you, Julia.
Pinot on the River started at the Retreat, one of the hotel was a retreat resort that Roadhouse, before it was Roadhouse. Yeah. Started at, and we did it. It was just a few wineries and Dostoevsky cooked. And we decided at that point there had to be a Pinot on the river because there was no event at the time for Pinot Noir in the Russian River. So Eric Hall was the one that invited us and was really the original producer. That he and Greg got together and produced a fantastic event for years and years.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to bring up, since we're talking about Russian River and we're talking about Pinot, let's talk about what we're drinking, because we've got 3 wines we're going to go through tonight, because we actually told Chris he's going to be stuck with us for an hour. We want to actually have fun, pick his brain, and why not? It's Wednesday, it's Veterans Day, it's a holiday. What else are we doing? So we've got the 17 Russian River Valley Pinot Noir, the 17 777 clones, and the 17 Pommard clones. We're going to be talking about tasting, telling stories. Guys are going to go through it. But right now, we've got the 17 Russian River in the glass. And this was one that Chris actually asked us to make sure we had. And reasoning, Chris?
Okay. Well, the reasoning behind this is it represents Russian River Valley. And I think that this is a really important part of what Papa Pietro is. And I got the chance, I was driving back from, where was I? I was down in Carmel, and I was driving back, of course, terrible traffic. And I had scheduled a call with Ben. And so I had time to talk to Ben. I was driving, and him and I were talking about how the hell did you get this whole brand started? And so it goes back to some stories. I'm going to bring up one about his time with the union and newspapers in a few minutes, but the most important one was really Bert Williams, and how he and Bert Williams, for those of you that know William Salium fame, how he really kind of got, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I could make some wine thing, and how Bert really got him to kind of think about Russian River Valley and taught him lessons. And I think this is the most important thing here, about finding great fruit sources. So if you don't have all the money, to buy a bunch of vineyards and plant vineyards and things, what do you do? And so I think this is a great example of what makes Papa Pietro Perri so important to me, is their relationship with great growers. And I think this is really it inside of a glass right here, is not just about the Papa Pietro style, but also about why each vineyard is important in this blend.
I think that's a great point to it all. I think it also tells in this wine industry, it's not about competition either. Bert was willing to, work with Ben and show Ben, and you guys worked together, and Ben's mentored other winemakers. And so it's that sharing of information. It's that working together, which is, I think, integral in this industry. You don't find that in other industries. But Ben, right, was Bert part of the paper? How did you?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, well, Bert worked at the newspaper. I knew him way before he ever made wine. We were partying. He and another good friend of mine that worked at the paper were doing light shows at the Avalon Ballroom. They were Magic Lantern Light Show or some name like that. I can't remember exactly. And we used to go on weekends and go to the Avalon Ballroom and watch them put on a show. And so we hung out a lot. And then he started making wine in his basement in the early 70s. And whenever we'd visit, we would drink his wine. And then he and Ed got together in the late 70s and did Hacienda del Rio as a bootlegging operation. And they were selling it at Ed's Spears grocery store until the ABC, I guess, told them to get licensed to go to jail, I guess.
So he was a bootlegger too.
Yeah, they were. And so some of the best winemakers start as bootleggers.
You bootlegging paper boys. I don't know about you guys.
So anyway, I was very fortunate when they had their first winery on Fulton, just before Fulton Cross, on River Road. He had this little garage that they turned into the winery and worked out of there for years. And then Howie Allen on Allen property across the street from Brocchioli invited him and built the winery for him. Then that became William Sellium. And I was just very fortunate to be mentored by Bert all through the 80s and early 90s. And then in 95, I was general manager at Roots. I hired Bert's son, Fred, to be the winemaker there for a year that I was there. So had a great relationship with the Williams family for years. Now both of them have passed away very sadly, and he's definitely missed.
I think that story just blew me away, and I just really enjoyed that. I thought that this would be a good story to share with a lot of people that don't really know that about you. And just me, I couldn't even really write it in the story because, I had to write about all these winning wines and stuff. And I was like, I need to tell more people this story, because this story makes Papa Pietro Perry such a great brand, and all these kinds of things that go along with it. But so right down the street from there is, of course, the Booker's Vineyard, which is part of this blend, and then you've got more parts. So tell everyone a little bit about the parts in this blend, because it's special. Well,
little bits of all the vineyards we work with in the Russian River end up in here, and I had one little small vineyard, Pinot property, which was just a couple acres, just below where Matrix is on West Side Road. And so we were doing a little bit of there, but Peters, Nunes, Booker, Laris, and Vinoy is all of it is part of the Russian River Valley release that we do. And it's always different because different parts, when I use different parts for the vineyard designates from those vineyards, the parts that are left over are still really terrific, but they don't fit into the actual vineyard designate. So I use those in the Russian River. So every year that number, the different percentages of each one of those vineyards always change. So, but it gives me the palette to play with, and it always turns out the Russian River is always one of my favorites because it has so many different levels of complexity and different flavors in it. It always shows really well.
Well, I think as a sommelier, I think that really, when I think about all these parts that are put together in there, it gives me more, like when you have a bite of food today, this is what really happened to me too. I mean, besides all this other stuff that I did, I got lucky by being, kind of born in the late 60s, early 70s, in a time where the transition of food was happening, and this thing called Food Network started, and people started following Julia Child, and things were happening there, but we didn't have the food that we have today. And I think that's why these parts in here are you look at a plate today, it's not a steak and potatoes, it's not. And that's the thing, is that we have individual bites that match up with individual sips of this. And I think that's where really we've gone with, especially with Pinot Noir. And we're going to talk about the clones in way more detail in a few minutes. But I mean, I think that's why the clones that you get from these vineyards, not only is the terroir, what we call terroir, the climate conditions, and obviously the soils are very different at each one of these. If they were replicas of each other, what's the point, But also, what are the clones that really work there? These are, when we say clones, to everyone out there that doesn't know the clonal, how we talk about this, a clone is a propagation that came from the old world, in most cases, almost let's say 85% of the cases, it's from Burgundy. We're talking about Pinot Noir, but there are a few from Switzerland, like the 2A, 1A, and Clone 23, which is Mariafeld. Yeah. Those are all from Switzerland. But so we have these things, and they came from specific vineyards there. And if they have numbers on them, they're usually a Dijon clone. And especially if they have 3 numbers, they are a Dijon clone. And that's 667, 777, and the early ones, 113, 114, 115. And then we get into 828, which is kind of a nouveau thing. And then there's faux 828, but let's not go there. A faux 828 is a super weird one. It's a weird one that grows out at you erect, and you're like, oh, what is this? So it's just kind of awkward one. But, these are the kinds of plant material that we talk about. And then there's another term, too, that's really, really important, and it's called special selection. Special selection it came from the old world, but it's how it came. It didn't go through any university to get here. It came from those really cool winemakers that went there, and they just happened to have a pair of shears with them. And they kind of actually were taking pictures of this one vineyard, and they just happen to have an empty suitcase, or sometimes they tucked it into their jackets or vests or something like that. And things just happen, and the Swan clone or the Swan selection is one of them. Calera, Pizzoni selection. These are all selections that were brought back over here, and the faux 828 is definitely one of those too. So we have all these things. So it sounds like a bunch of weird science projects, and that's exactly what it is. Pinot Noir is the most amazing grape. And when you think about this, I did an amazing cruise last year with Celebrity Cruises, and actually Costco Travel, really impressed by them. All I did was call it Pinot Paradise in the Caribbean. It sold out in 3 days, 115 rooms. Boom, done. Let's move on. And I brought one of your wines, and I think it was just the Russian River too that I brought. And the fact is that people want to know more about this. And I'll tell you, Ben and Kristen and I will tell you right now, you'll never, ever learn enough about Pinot Noir. And the thing is, too, that really separates it, everyone goes, oh, I love Cab, too. I love Cab is a byproduct of 2 different grapes that came together. It's called Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc that were matched together and basically cultivated that way. This is an internal ingenious kind of thing that was actually from France and really got cultivated there with the help of the Romans like 1,000 years ago. So It is actually, the Pinot Noir is the father not only to Pinot Meunier and Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc. All of those are mutations of some way of Pinot Noir, but it's also the father to Chardonnay. Who would have thought?
I did not actually know that.
Yeah, so that's how important this grape is.
I do have a question. Ron is asking, is a clone a graft from another vine? But no.
It is a cutting selection that comes over. Being the UC Davis grad, it comes over and gets cleaned up. So we do not want any viruses. You guys remember about viruses, these kinds of things that we're dealing with continuously now? So viruses, that really spread. So we don't want bad grapes coming here. So and cuttings, they're cuttings, and how they come over, they get propagated. In the case of Dijon clones, they went through Oregon State University, and there's reasons for that too, because they couldn't really ripen the kinds of grapes. And we're going to talk about the Pommard grape. Let's just use that as an example here. Pommard was already here. It came through UC Davis a long time ago, like the Martini clone and a few of these other ones that were before Pinot Noir became really anything of note. They were already here. But the problem with growing them up there in Oregon was that they have a very short season versus us. So they needed these kinds of clones, these cuttings from the old world to come over here so they could propagate and actually have a smaller season, but really get great grapes out of them. And that's how it all started. And so, yes, they come through in cuttings, and then they get propagated, and then companies purchase the rights to those clones, and then they start selling them to people that Ben and I know, and then they grow them.
Okay, so I've always explained clones, and you can correct me now, since let me know what I think. I always explain clones, and I kind of copied this from Ben a little bit, as envision tomatoes or apples or roses. You have yellow, you have white, you've got red, you've got different roses. There's a difference to them, but they're all roses. And so your different clones are different roses. And this Russian River Valley mix of clones would be a very colorful bouquet, all from Russian River Valley. But when we go to
100%.
Pommard clones, we are seeing all yellow roses, but from different areas and different terroirs, because they're a little bit different, but they're still all the yellow roses. And that's how I understand it. Is that correct?
I think you got an A+ on that paper. I mean, that's a perfect one right there. And it really, so kind of going into this next wine, it goes into something that Ben and I had a great time doing. And we were at the World of Pinot Noir a few years ago, and I decided to do a special class just on this for sommeliers and great consumers that were with us down in Santa Barbara at the Bacar. And that's a great, hotel and everything. We had an amazing panel that I brought down and I assembled with Ben being one of them. And we really talked about clones, and I called it Attack of the Clones. So, because people, like, if you want to get super duper 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 nerdy in wine, you get into Pinot Noir. That's just basically it, because you just can't learn enough about it. I mean, really, Cabernet, there's not many clones of Cabernet. Sorry, guys. There's a few of Chardonnay. Most of them are variations of Wente and some of this new Dijon. There really aren't that many clones when we really start talking about other grape varieties. But you get into Pinot, oh my God, geez, where are we going with this? You're just
how many clones are there of Pinot Noir?
Hundreds. Yeah, hundreds and thousands. It's kind of like, here, going back to the food thing. If you ask people from Peru, oh, you know what? I had a purple Peruvian potato. Oh, it was so great. Gosh, how do you that's like, you have a brown one and then you have a purple one. They're like, we have thousands of potatoes. And so it's the same thing with heirloom tomatoes. Exactly, Kristen. Heirloom tomatoes. There's Cherokees, there's green zebras, there's just all these kinds that you just kind of like, wow, I could get super nerdy on this. But it is the same thing that we do with Pinot Noir, and that is a comparison that it's really great. I think the only thing you could do is like talk to a dentist about being a dentist, and when he's got you down and you're kind of like this and he's cleaning your teeth and you can't say a word and he just starts going on and on and on and on. And we could do the same thing, but we choose not to because we'd rather be drinking fine wines. That's just kind of how it goes. Yeah.
I agree. And I love the Russian River. I think it's delicious every year. Ben, any favorite pairings you have with this?
Well, this one here, I would say anything with mushrooms would be, because it has earthy mineraliness to it. It's got some forest floor. I think anything that had mushrooms in it, like maybe a chicken and a cream sauce with some morels or something like that. Some sauteed chanterelles would be fantastic. It would bring that out because it's got all that earthiness to it. I think would show well.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the River's End, that amazing restaurant out there near Jenner. And one night I was out there with Jasmine Hirsch. It was before I was doing another year where I did a really great seminar with Jasmine Hirsch on the Hirsch Vineyard, and I went up there and it started getting real rainy out there, and you're pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to take a while to get back into Highway 101 from way out there. So I stopped by there. I had one of the best, just an amazing mushroom bisque there, and it just like, as we get in, and I think that this is something, maybe an underlying theme of some of the things that we're going to talk about today is just, food and wine. I mean, look, everyone, our restaurants are not in good shape right now. We're really having a hard time. We can't even go to the restaurants we want because we can't even get in because they have limited seating. And we don't know what's going to happen here, especially when it gets cold and rainy out. So we have become the chefs ourselves. So we have to take this under our wings too. And we have to find the right wines to pair with them. And I think that this is a great example of not only mushrooms and wild mushroom risotto, things like that, but also salmon, as we were talking about earlier. I'm going to have salmon with this tonight. And especially if you put a little bit of char on it, if you can do it on a grill, that's great. Or maybe even in the broiler and something like that, where you've got a little bit of a char on there, because you've got a lot of components here inside this glass. So it's really helpful, and putting that little bit of herb on top of that, some fresh parsley, things like that, always help. So I think that these are good examples of really fine foods that you could do with Russian River style. And I mean, this is Russian River to me. I think about mushrooms, I think about the forest, I think about all of those things. I think about the Russian River, of course, and I think about the tradition of how we ate as kids, and we weren't eating all, steak and potatoes at all in Russian River. I mean, there were too many. I mean, you go back to the Dutton families. I mean, they were growing the best produce around before they got really crazy and pulled out that D9 tractor and started plowing down a bunch of stuff and putting in these vineyards. Things changed quickly, and I think that this is a really great example of a stylistic wine that really can match up with so many different types of food.
No, you're right. I grew up on cube steaks, so I'm definitely not one to talk. I know. Sorry, Florida, a lot of kids. What can I do?
I do like to bring up Salisbury steaks. Anyone ever have a Salisbury steak out there? I think we all have, actually. If you were in the 70s and you didn't have a Salisbury steak, I don't know where you're
not missing out. Go to the same therapy we go to, without a doubt. We actually did a salmon Wellington one year.
Oh,
salmon with the foie gras and the duxelle mushrooms and the wrap. Oh, recipes on
got me there. Yeah,
it was delicious. Yeah,
another one too. Just to finish this off too, is just ahi tuna. Especially poke and things like that would be really nice with this. We go into Asian cuisine. I mean, here we are on the West Coast. I mean, we eat Asian cuisine all the time, almost as much as we eat Mexican food. I don't think we could live without Mexican food. But it's something that we have, and we think fish, and I think that this is a really important thing about Pinot Noir too, that we really need to talk about, is just Merlot. Believe it or not, you guys, Merlot is totally back, and the movie Sideways actually was the greatest thing ever, because it was getting to be a commodity grape, not a world-class grape. And it's just because people were planting it everywhere because it made money. And it's the same thing with Pinot. We have to watch that. And thank God in Russian River, we have so many good sites. But, it will happen out there in different parts of America that are trying to plant this in the wrong places. But what Merlot did for us, and this is maybe the most important thing I think of when I think about Merlot, and why it built the bridge for Pinot to get here, is it was the first red wine that home ec teachers were going, maybe it's not only white wines that you can have with fish and chicken and pork, but that's what home ec teachers were telling us the whole time. And so it really started that, and it's because the tannins were balanced. And I think that's the same thing with Pinot Noir. And in fact, we get into even more gentle tannins and sometimes bigger tannins, as we're going to get into with like the 777 is a bigger one. It's a more robust wine than the Pommard. And yet this one is a perfect example that can go with so many things. And I think if I were to pick one of these wines that we're going to talk about to go with the Thanksgiving dinner, it would be this Russian River blend. Because think about turkey. You can judge this how it goes with turkey, but is that what's on the table? Turkey is the most bland chicken or poultry thing ever, but it's everything else on the table that it needs to match up to, and this is that wine.
My only suggestion on that is to have a magnum of it, because the one bottle will go very quickly, and magnums age beautifully. Magnums are amazing, but we're going to go on to the Pommard. I know Ron is saying, he loves to pair. Ron is one of our awesome club members in New Jersey, and he's an amazing cook. Meats, grilled fish, grilled veggies, tuna or salmon burgers on a brioche bun.
Wow.
I know. I told Ron he has to cook for us when he comes out. Is a very versatile wine that can go with a lot of meats, because it can also go with a lot of like the look at him. He's got the 17. All right, we're moving on to 17 Pommard. One of my favorites is the oh my God, I gotta show mine too. You want to keep us all honest? Here we go. All right, 17 Pommard. Let's pour this bad boy. Ben, what was it about the Pommard? Because when we originally started, you made the blend, Russian River blend. Then you did a single vineyard Pinot, a Peters, a single vineyard Laris. Then for some reason you started doing a Pommard. Hold on. Ron, Mukaida is Russian River Valley because it is Peter's Vineyard, which is Russian River Valley. Yes. But Ben, I apologize. So Pommard clones, why did you decide to do a clonal designate wine? Not a lot of wineries do these.
Well, first of all, a little note about the Pommard clone. It was probably one of the very earliest clones grown in the Russian River. We had kind of touched on that, but it was the workhorse of the Russian River. And we have been to France a couple times, and south of Beaune is the commune of Pommard. So we've drank some really beautiful Pommard clones from. What happened?
What? You're still there.
You're there. You're
We
there.
still see you.
Yeah, it just mine just disappeared. So,
Well, you didn't. Chris, he's left me before in the middle of one of these. All of a
Yeah.
sudden the screen went blank, but he's still there.
I'm
He
working.
looks good.
I'll be right
We can
with
get him and think he's not seeing us, but we see you actually, Ben. You're actually right there.
Surprised Yolanda's not yelling at him yet.
My screen is blank, so I have to do this a moment.
Go blind.
Okay.
Just
So
walk.
let this take a second.
No. Well,
Okay.
I can do this. Ask
Okay.
Chris about judging. Okay, so while we're in a standoff, Chris, you judge this in the American Fine Wines.
Correct. So this is the wine that I really wanted to feature because this was at the beginning of this year. Oh gosh, there he does go.
I brought
Oh
him
my
back.
gosh! Wow! Wow!
Ben, you're on twice.
This is total entertainment, everyone. I hope you guys all have glasses in your hands
Now
because
TV.
this is there he is. He can't even really hear. I mean, he's there, but then he's on.
He just totally left us, Chris.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Pommard real quick while Ben's gone.
What's your
the
real
fact
feeling?
is that the first competition I usually judge is the San Francisco Chronicle wine competition. It's usually the first week of the year, and this year it was this next year it will be at the very end of January. But the fact is that I go straight from there to Florida to right outside of Miami to judge the American Fine Wine Competition, which is a very interesting competition. It's not the same as the San Francisco Chronicle. The San Francisco Chronicle, people just submit all their wines and they give us gold or whatever. This one is an invitational. You get asked to actually come in. You can ask permission to come into it, but people like myself are suggesting that these are the great wineries and they will benefit from this. And so it's a little bit different. And judging back there, it's all pretty much, Ellen Landis and I and sometimes Dr. Liz Tosh, who's a master of wine, will be coming out. I think Eduardo Dingler will be this next year from the West Coast, but it's a lot of the big power of Florida and the East Coast that judges this. And it's an intensive tasting because there's not really any dogs in that competition at all. They are all great wines, and that's why we suggested that they enter this competition and why they're invited to. And so I think that what really blew me away was this year there were some really good finishing rounders where we sit in this amazing kind of amphitheater. It's a classroom. This is the Wine Spectator built this building. It's a Wine Spectator building and on the campus there at Florida International University. And we always do it when there's no class in session. So it's always got to be a holiday because there's just too many. There's like 31,000 kids that go to school on that campus alone. And so there's just too much. So we have the kind of campus to ourselves, and it's an amazing thing. So as it went down, there was a Syrah, there was a Cabernet, of course. You got all these people that love Cabernet. And there was a Merlot. There was a very nice one in the red category. And this is the one that came out on top. This one over all the reds that were entered, over all the Napa Valley cabs, all these kinds of things. And this one was not surprising to me at all. I think that this one, once again, we're talking about what Ben's been doing with these great family vineyards. But now this is one single clone that actually are from a couple of the different. I think there's how many are in this, Ben, from different vineyards?
There's 3, but when I first started out with Pommard, one night late, we had the 2 vineyards that we were working with when we first got started. It was Laris and Peters. So at the end of the night, we had been tasting all the different clones from those 2 vineyards. We had the 2 Pommards we really liked. So at the end, we just put them together kind of as a fluke, and they actually were so much better together than they were separate. So since we get all of our fruit in every vineyard, we keep the clones separate as they come in, and then they're aged separately until spring when I put the blends together. So I went back to the winery and started fooling around with a Pommard clone, single clone to multiple sites. So now it has Bucher, Laris, and Peters in it. It's the 3 vineyards that we source our Pommard fruit from, and so it really is. I've tasted a lot of single clone wines, some single vineyards, and they're very one-dimensional. This way, it has 3 different soils and 3 different microclimates, gives it a lot more character. But that's kind of what we built on with our Pommard. Starting in 2003 was the first Pommard I made.
And so the American Fine Wine Competition judges all different types of varietals, wines from all over the states or all over.
It's America. I mean, we're not doing international like we do for Sunset International and some of these, like San Francisco International and some of those things. But it's always the United States. But it's the best regions. I mean, well, this was up against Willamette Valley Pinots and Central Coast Pinots and everything. And then even on top of that, it won best of class. And then it went on to the greatness of winning over all reds.
Right.
So there's a bigger distinction, and we'll talk about it on the next one too, which is a little bit closer to home with the North Coast Wine Challenge, which is another great one. But I mean, this was up against the top tier of all categories of everything of red. And even against white, so you have to kind of keep going and going and going, and what's going to win the best of the best. That's great.
How do you judge realistically? So I do these Wine Wednesdays, and everyone knows I like to drink my wine. I can't drink a ton of them and still function. Well, I kind of can, but
well, I am I'm a writer. A public speaker, all these kinds of different things, but I'm also a professional spitter. That's actually what I kind of do. Like if I drank all this stuff, there's no way in hell I'd be standing here or even sitting here right now. It just doesn't work that way. And we did a final round of another great one this morning, the Harvest Challenge. And, I no problem after that, but I spit everything, Tonight, I'm drinking this stuff. Are you kidding me? I'm not crazy there. But the fact is, you have to be very good and agile almost to be able to taste and spit at the same time. I mean, you just can't swallow stuff. I mean, sometimes there's a great wine where you're like, oh, hey, save me a glass of that for later, But the fact is, you just can't do it without spitting. There's no way. Especially, some of these, most of them, you're doing 100 wines a day to 140 at the max. And it just, you just have to spit. You have to be a professional spitter. And it's been 20 plus years of wine judging that's made me very, very good at what I do. And you've also got to be able to write down your notes. And to be really honest, as we get into like the next competition that we'll talk about in a second is the North Coast Wine Challenge. And we have to write down any gold medal. We have to write down notes on that. So you're going to get not only a number, a 90 plus number on there is a big deal, but double gold is a 95 and above. And that's what they did indeed get for that 777, which we'll talk about. But you have to even be able to be cognizant enough to tell it what the heck is going on inside that glass, while you're tasting. So it's a great one. Yeah.
Well, I've got a couple of questions that are coming in. Number one, this is my question. What is the earliest time you started tasting wine? Number one. What?
I'm better in the morning.
You're better in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll start with reds in the morning just because the palate is every competition's a little bit different, but it's not uncommon in some of them to start with reds and then finish with whites. So
Very
it's
European,
just
though, right?
yeah, very, very European. And you know, high acid and stuff. The worst one I ever did, and it was this team that I got taken off that team, and I got placed on the team with Richard Peterson, one of the greatest legends of the wine industry. And so I was with him for a day, and I was having the greatest time ever. And I come back to my team, and they had made this terrible decision to taste port first in the morning. Like, what? Before Sauvignon Blanc? Like, are you kidding me? Just like numbskulls. I swear to God, it was the worst day ever because your palate is absolutely destroyed at the beginning, and we went nowhere that day. It was like terrible. Yeah. So that will never happen again.
Okay, so no port first. Okay, next question. How do you cleanse your palate while judging? And then part of this could be, can you explain how do you actually taste when you place the wine in your mouth?
Great question. So first of all, you drink a ton of water. You're going to the bathroom all the time because you drink a ton of water. Sometimes it's sparkling. I like sparkling, but I'll also drink still. We have very bland foods on the table, and they're about as bland as you get. They should be because you don't want to interfere too much, but you have to have something in your stomach. There's just no way you can get around it. So it's usually just French bread and some really bland like Lumburger cheese and things like that. And once we get into good heavy duty red wines, it'll be some raw, rare kind of roast beef and things like that. You can't go much further than that. One time I did do a competition up in Seattle that was like, it kind of blew me away because they had like a candy section, like where you could go and get scoops of Skittles and stuff. I was like, oh, what? What are you guys doing? You know, like
I bet it went well with pork.
Like it was, yeah, I haven't been back to that one. But you know, and they had Fritos. Like Fritos, really? And that's going to cleanse your palate, really? So I was a little worried about those guys. But the other thing is, you know, how do we taste it without being able to drink it? So it really is a super sensory thing, and I think that everyone can do it. And to be really honest, I want to say one thing, that if you learn one thing from this whole deal tonight, probably the best thing when you go to visit, you know, Papa Pietro Perry or any great winery that you go to, always take a first sip. And take that first sip and, okay, all you're doing is recalibrating your palate. You're just taking that first one. You're not really getting too, you know, like, oh, yeah, this is great, or it's bad, or it's anything. You're just recalibrating your palate, and you're getting used to that wine. And now that second sip is it. It's money. You know, it's it. Like, so think about it. Like, that's why spitting, and you can do this. Don't do a sideways and drink the juice and all that stuff. But you know, it's really just recalibrating your palate and that's basically it. And you do that, and then now you're ready. You're ready to be real, and you're ready to taste that wine. So you've got it coating your palate so it's not interfered by things. And I think a lot of that stuff I learned through great people, but also just too much acid in your system. It gets really kooky weird where the acid from that wine is connecting with this acid, and you're just going, what's happening inside my stomach? So, or my throat for that matter. But it's also all the things you can feel in there. And I'll give women 100% credit for having better palates than men. I mean, it's pretty much who really thought about Merlot as being so cool, and who thought about Pinot Noir as being so cool first? The women. They just don't want tannins all over them. You know, they want to taste this wine. And so I think that really is a big deal to me about how to taste. And it's really the electricity that really goes off inside your system. And I think that there's it kind of great flavors bounce around inside your system. And that third taste for me is really the cutting one, like where I can go, I predict that this will be a great wine for 12 to 15 years because it really has that structure and everything. Besides just the flavors, how does it taste as a complete package? So I usually taste every wine 3 times, even on the fly and at tasting rooms or anywhere, because it will really help you guys out there to really appreciate the wine, get a better feeling for the wine, and also even think deeper about the wine. And so that first sip, not telling much, to be really honest.
Oh, interesting. All right, well, let's talk about this Pommard. Did you have your 1, 2, 3 sips of the Pommard clones?
Yes.
This is one of my favorites. I like anything that's in my glass, but I love the deep dark mass. I like it with and without food.
What I found.
Oh,
go ahead, Ben.
The French description of Pommard is the iron fist in a velvet glove, and it's the power behind the flavor, and then the velvetiness and smoothness of that grape, and that's always appealed to me. I think the power of the Pommard clone itself is a amazing clone, and amazing wines come from Pommard. But I happen to like that one.
Ben, do we get Pommard clones from any other vineyards that we do not include in the Pommard, but we include the Pommard clone in the single vineyard? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, all the vineyards that I have Pommard growing on end up, those 4 are in there. I had another vineyard at a time, but we no longer have that one. But Charles Vineyard grows Pommard, but it's Anderson Valley, so I can't use that Pommard in the blend, but I do use. I mean, I guess you could use like a half a barrel or a barrel.
Yeah, 85% for an appellation is right, but
it's not necessary. The clones of Pommard that are grown in the Russian River on the vineyards that I use, they're all well-known vineyards and they're all classic. And the clones coming from there are fantastic. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say one thing that I get from Pommard, it doesn't matter where it's from, but I'm detecting it in this too. I mean, I get a little bit of blue fruit just on the nose, kind of flighty, kind of like violets and black fruits, mainly red fruits. But I always get, and it really is interesting, root beer barrel candies when you were a kid. I mean, it's something about that on this nose, and I could spot Pommard just like I can spot eucalyptus for like Zinfandels, and there's a eucalyptus tree somewhere near there, and the same thing with the Muscat clone of Sauvignon Blanc and how it always smells like melons. This Pommard always has that root beer barrel. There's some form of that root beer barrel. Maybe it's been cooked down by grandma and some cookie that he had, but it's there. It's there.
We add those candies.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if that was true.
It's the A&W clone. we do not do that. Just to be clear and fair.
Yeah. They don't filter through it. No.
That doesn't filter.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. It's just a fascinating clone, and to be really honest, if you really ask me my favorite Oregon Willamette Valley wines, they're usually the ones that were planted before all the Dijons came in, and they're usually Pommard. I mean, sometimes you have those spots in Oregon that really work. We happen to be super duper lucky in Russian River Valley that we actually ripen every year. This year was a hard year. Let's not say that it wasn't because it didn't ripen. But certain things happen, and this probably will not be declared by many people, but as a vintage. But that's not the point. Is that we do ripen here, and Oregon is you're taking a risk every year. They've had more rainfall, and they've also had higher heat, in all these places. So every year is very, very different. Theirs is much more like Burgundy, where you can have great vintage as the world's greatest vintage, and then you can just be done for that year. And it's because Mother Nature just decided to torture you a little bit. So, I think that what we have in Russian River is the gratitude of Mother Nature, and she really decided to be really super nice to us often. I don't know what we did so good. It wasn't us. It was obviously some people before us, but I think that's a really good thing.
Well, I started making wine in 1980, and that was just shortly after the Thrilla in Paris.
Manila? Oh, okay.
Michael Jackson's Thriller?
So no. This barrier tasting in France.
1976.
That put California on the map. This industry was dead after phylloxera and prohibition.
Kristen, I'll be right back.
Yeah, it killed us for the prohibition, and phylloxera killed winemaking in California until the late 50s. There was only just a few wineries, and people weren't interested that much in wine. It was all a cocktail society, and now, very fortunately, with more plantings than that, wine has grown. But in my short period of time, in 40 years, we've seen this whole industry blossom incredibly,
No, it definitely has. And Wendy Nunez from Nunez Vineyard is saying, you can get some great wines in off years. But I do have a question that I've always wanted to know before we go to the 777. We do the Dijon clones, right? Pommard and 777. And when we're done with harvest, you guys put this field crop in between the vineyards, right? Which includes mustard.
Yes.
Is it Dijon mustard? American mustard?
Well, I don't do any planting, so I'll take their word for whatever they plant there.
Dan just told me that was horrible. Whatever. I think it's funny.
You made that one up yourself.
I did make that one up myself.
Did not write that up.
He didn't write that one. All right, can we go to the 777 because my glass is about empty?
Yes. So Chris is going to tell you about the judging in the North Coast Wine Challenge, which Steve Falk was the originator of that, but he was also the originator of the Chronicle Wine Competition, which preceded that. That was his first foray into wine competition, and then when he took over the Press Democrat, he brought in the North Coast Wine Challenge.
But you also then have to explain what happened. For those of you who haven't heard the story, because I do love hearing it every time, why did you decide you made the Pommard? The Pommard scored great. It was amazing. But then something in you caused you to make a 777. You don't make a 116. You don't make a 115. You don't make another colonial blend. You opted for the 777.
So I was in Las Vegas doing sales. One late night after I got through with sales, I was playing $2 slot machines and putting the money in and playing. And I put the money in this, and then I pulled this one. This one hit for $2,500. And shocked, as I'm looking at this in shock, this one hit for $1,000. So I had $3,500 all in sevens. And it just hit me that, wow, I have at least 4 vineyards and maybe 5 vineyards that grow the 777 clone. So I went back to the winery, having worked with Pommard before in the single clone. I decided to make a 777 clone wine and made it specifically for Las Vegas as a roller wine. So we sold a lot of that 777 in Las Vegas as a high roller wine.
And I will tell everybody out there that I've asked Ben this story 800 times and it hasn't changed. So it's true. Your amounts have not changed. What you've won, it doesn't get bigger and bigger. And the 777, the 17 that I have, because I'm going to show it, you just scored hugely high in the Press Democrat. By the way, we only have like 12 cases left at the winery, just FYI, anybody out there. Yeah, it aged. I mean, it's a beautiful wine. And Chris, were you part of that judging?
I was, and I wrote a story about that. If I conk out here, you guys, I'm trying to like recharge this thing really quickly. But this won the #1 red in the North Coast Wine Challenge, and that's against everything there is. And these are the best judges of, California that came together for this event. And I think that for everyone out there that really knows this competition, it's a big deal. And I will say this, that Steve from the Press Democrat, who we were just talking about, he's just an amazing gentleman. But he was also at one point Ben's boss at the San Francisco Chronicle. And when Ben when Ben said, "I have a dream. I am going to leave the Chronicle, and I'm going to make wine." And it was like a big deal. And Steve said, "That's great. I mean, hey man, I'm wishing you the best of all times." Oh shit!
Fine.
Yep.
Fuck.
Don't say that. You can keep talking. We can do this. I've been drinking for the last hour.
Well,
To me.
did he freeze? I think he
froze. Well, when the blood goes sideways, what can you do?
There you have it.
So Steve Falk was one of our guests on a Wine Wednesday, however long ago. You can find all these on our Facebook and our YouTube page. But Steve is a hoot listening to him and Ben talk about the whole Teamster thing, the whole
Thanks.
my computer's not going off yet, is all I could say. No, but Steve was great in listening to everything with the two of you guys going back and forth. And your first huge negotiations were with each other, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Steve said he was 33 years old, and he came to the newspaper, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to negotiate with those guys, the Teamsters," which he had never done before. So it was a great experience. We negotiated 2 contracts, and they're usually cantankerous, and there is some controversy, and it turns out that even though we were on the opposite sides of the table, we had something in common. So it all worked out well, and we're still friends. So that
and you're still friends, which is
yeah,
it's huge. But the interesting thing to me that Steve was saying, and dang it, I wish Chris could hear me say this, was that the North Coast Wine Challenge is not just a bunch of sommeliers or wine educators that are judging this. They also bring in wine buyers from restaurants, wine buyers from retail stores. So you have that retail, that restaurant, these somms, these winemakers, these wine judges, all that kind of stuff is super cool because you're getting so many different opinions and views. And this wine is good because I like this, yada, yada. You're getting a lot of that stuff, which is a lot of fun. And Ron, you're right. Live is fun because it's real. This is clearly real. None of this has been planned. It's what makes it fun.
he was hanging upside down last time we saw him.
He was.
Perfect. He was frozen sideways.
He was frozen sideways. Ben, that is what your 777 does to people.
Boy, oh boy. Well, not only did we win, we didn't only win the 777 got 99 points, but
he's back.
I'm back! Yay! Sorry, you guys. When Chargers get rid of you, it's not good. It's not good.
I'm just saying that not only did we get the best red wine, three of the wines got double goals: the Newness, the Sonoma Coast, and the Laris.
Yeah.
All of them got 95, 96, and 97 points. And the 777 got 99 points and came in second place to a white wine for the best wine of the competition. So,
yeah, and that white wine was the San Giacomo Chardonnay, which is, you want to talk about magic, and a really, once again, why Sonoma County is so important is great farmers. There's no doubt that that's what. If you hear the San Giacomo name, you're not really thinking about their finished wine. You're thinking about who they sell their grapes to, because they sell to like 80 different wineries, and they're really respected wineries. So I think that was really what I love, the fact that right after I got off of the phone with you on my little road back from Carmel, when I was talking to you and I was really getting into your head, Ben, I got to call Steve San Giacomo and ask him about their wine and what it felt like to win that big award, because, these are super critics. I mean, and there's winemakers, there's great people like Heidi Barrett, and there's like Leslie Zabracco and people like that we judge with that are, they're super critical of stuff. And now we have the best of the best, and we have the whole thing of reds and Pinots and with against Cab and against Merlot and against Sonoma County Zinfandel. Are you kidding me? And this Pinot wins it all. And I think that was really saying a lot. I know, exactly. Yay. But it made me so happy. And did you finish the story, Ben, about Steve and you do I need to finish that part? Because
I do have to say, Chris, your nickname may now become Unfrozen Sideways.
Yeah.
Just
It is just the fact that it was Steve was like, oh wow, I want to tell you guys this story as he announced the winner, and he said, I gotta say one thing about this. That guy Ben, he makes some pretty darn good wines, and I'm now a member of his club, and so. I hope a lot of you guys out there are members of the Papa Pietro Perry Club too. I'm a big fan of this brand, and I just really believe in it, and I believe in the passion. I believe in your passion too, Kristen. I mean, I believe in everyone. When I come to the tasting room, and I always have such a fun time there. And you guys do so much stuff for the people that visit, but also providing these kinds of experiences at home. I mean, when we talk about kinds of food pairings with this one, I would be going much more into, this is kind of like wild boar. This is kind of like bigger kinds of, pasta dishes, and definitely some lamb. Lamb is something that can totally be taken in. If you like Pinot and lamb, this is your baby right here, because this is that Nouveau 777 that wasn't here, 15, 20 years ago. 777 was nothing. But now it's a big player. And it's going to provide those kinds of bigger, stronger kinds of wines, but they're bigger structure wines too. And I think that's really what the judges felt.
They have great acidity, the 777 clone. I think that's what makes it a really good fruit wine, is because the bright acidity that just matches with food just brings out the best of food, like lamb or beef or fish.
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that the wine drinks beautifully on its own, but when you pair it with a great dish, it kind of gives that extra wow factor. And Ben, you are amazing. Your wines are consistent year after year. You've got some elegance to it. People know what they're getting with the wines. And I know you like to say it all happens in the vineyard, because a lot of it does, without a doubt. But you make wine in easy years, and you make wine in hard, crap years where you really have to use your innate, because you're not schooled in this. This is your instinct in what you do. And it shows you are consistent year after year. You know what you're getting, and it's fun, and they age. And
I had a mentor, right? Bert Williams was a great mentor, and one of the pioneers in the Russian River, along with Joe Rocchioli and Swan, and there was 5 or 6 people, Kistler and Dellinger, that were Francis Mahoney and the Caneros, that were trailblazers in the 70s, when before Pinot there was any Pinot, and to be able to start making wine in 1980 and with the target of making Pinot Noir. To me, I'm amazed at where we are today, just a short 40 years later. We've conquered the world, more or less, and showed what Russian River Pinot Noir in California can do. Is amazing. Very amazing.
Matt's asking, and I assume the answer is yes, but I don't want to assume, is the North Coast Wine Challenge tasting blind? Most tastings are blind.
Oh, it's all blind. I don't do any that's not blind. It's got to be blind, and so it's a really important thing. I mean, sometimes we know the region, sometimes, Sometimes we know the price points. This one we do not know price point for the North Coast. Daryl Groom, a great Daryl Groom, wonderful winemaker and just an amazing character that we get to the
hang out.
The popularity of hugging him and not right now, but but all these kinds of things that we get him as our leader is an amazing thing. But he's very, very flat out. I do not want you guys to know the prices of these wines, and so that's a very interesting point.
Do you take off this piece of it? Are they?
They are pre-poured and wheeled out on. It's and I want to say one thing too to the Sonoma County Fairgrounds, just in general for us. We've been able to do. I just finished one today. We've been able to do 6 competitions since since kind of we got lifted a little bit from SIP, but it's amazing because we have to we get our temperatures taken. We're wearing masks until we sit down, and then we are spaced away from each other, kind of much bigger than at a restaurant table or something like that. We're like usually a team of 3, and then once we finish that round, we actually pour our own wines out and get up and get out of the people's way to reset us. And so they're bringing it out. We do not have the bagged wines, nothing like that. So it's very, very different. And it's been really taken to heart. And to be really honest, I give a lot of credit to our great friend, Deborah Del Fiorentino, who went to the basically all the leaders that be and said, Sonoma County, this is what we live on. This is it. This is wine country. And if we say no to these kinds of competitions, it's not gonna really benefit anyone. And so I feel really strong about that.
Deborah's dad was a newspaper driver.
Oh my God, you guys in the newspaper.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Italio del Florentino.
So cool.
All right, well, I have to say, Chris, we have to wrap it up. But Chris, I actually want to invite you back. This was a lot of fun. Let's do this. I feel like we just kind of touched the surface, and you've got some great information. You're fun. You're engaging.
Thank you.
I think this has been fun. So love to invite you back. I'll get Dan to touch out with you. But a couple things for everybody out there. We've got some, we are the virtual place to be. What else are you going to do during this time? So we've got Valley Ford Creamery out in Valley Ford is joining us for wine and cheese on December 3rd. We got bingo December 4th. We got another wine, chocolate, and cheese December 11th. We want more excuses to drink wine is really what it is. Chris is petting the bottle, so I think that means that's a favor. But hey, thank you everybody for joining us. I learned a lot. That was a lot of fun. Chris, Ben, you guys
say goodnight, Gracie.
Oh, say goodnight, Gracie.
Yeah. I love hanging out with Ben and you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a great pleasure. And look me up on SawyerSom.com. You can find out more things. But I definitely want to be back on with you guys, and let's talk more about food and wine. I think that would be a great thing to really get into more.
I think so too. Cheers. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. Cheers so much. We appreciate everything. Cheers.